And a message from someone, I don't know from whom, asking to dedicate the Shiur to the Nishmas Yenpo Bas Arya. Doing as was requested. Mazel tov l'urein. Yes, got a lot of mazel. Thank you for the story. We usually start with something from the Parsha. So I'm going to draw your attention. This week's Parsha, we have a lengthy story of the marriage of the Shidduch to Yitzchak and Rivka. It's a very long perek, 67 psukim in one perek, which is very unusual in Chumash. After the whole story of Eliezer and everything that transpired, now he gave it over. At the very end, it says, last passage, Yitzchak brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and Yikach has Rivka, and he took Rivka, he married her, and he loved her, and he was comforted after the passing of his mother. So when you look at the word superficially, Yitzchak brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah. It doesn't seem to be any interpretation necessary, any commentary necessary. It's very straightforward. Yitzchak brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah. Then he says he took Rivka and he married her and he loved her and he was comforted after the passing of his mother. I don't see anything here that needs commentary. Nevertheless, Rashi quotes the words Sarah, tent of his mother Sarah. Rashi explains that it's not what you think it means. You think it means he brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah. What it means is, he brought her into the tent. And he saw, behold, she was his mother Sarah. In other words, Nas's dugma Sarah ima, she became very similar. He found her to be very similar to his mother Sarah. In what way did he find her to be very similar to his mother Sarah? The Rashi continues, as long as Sarah was alive, there was a candle burning whole week from Friday night to Friday night, from Friday evening to Friday evening. There was a special blessing in the dough, but she baked bread. There was a special blessing in the dough. It doesn't say exactly how that manifested itself, but there was something miraculous happened with the dough. There was always a cloud over the tent. So during Sarah's lifetime, there's three phenomena. The fact that her Shabbos list lasted from one Friday to the next. The second is that in her dough, there was a special blessing. And the third, there was a cloud over her tent. Mishamesa Pasku, when Sarah died, these three phenomena came to an end. Shabbos Rivka Chazru. And when Rivka came now, these three phenomena were reinstated. So automatically, again, candles that Rivka lit lasted from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. The dough that she kneaded and baked had a special blessing in it. And again, there was a cloud on top of the tent. And then Rashi concludes, Bereishis Rabbi. The source for this is in Bereishis. So, first of all, the question, why does Rashi bother commenting at all? It's a beautiful medrash. But beautiful medrashim belong in medrash, not in Rashi. Rashi is a commentary that explains the simple pshat in the pasuk. For a 5-year-old child learning Chumash, he has to have the simple pshat in the pasuk. So Rashi explains when there's a difficulty in the simple pshat in the pasuk. Rashi explains. Over here, there doesn't seem to be any difficulty in the simple pshat in the pasuk. Why does Rashi b'chlal interfere? Why does he get involved? Furthermore, you want to say that Rashi quotes it from, as he says, he's quoting it from the Medrash Rabbi. So I brought a Medrash Rabbi with me over here. We'll open up the Medrash Rabbi. We'll see what the Medrash Rabbi says. The Medrash Rabbi says as follows. Yitzchak brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah. So the Medrash says, "Kol yamim sh'haisa Sarah kayemis." As long as Sarah was alive, haya anon kosher al pesach ahol. There was always a cloud over the entrance of her tent. Even shemeisa, when Sarah died, pasach oisei anon. The cloud stopped. The cloud stops appearing. Rivka came along, the cloud reappeared. That's point one. Point two, as long as Sarah was alive, the doors of the tent opened wide. Some kind of miraculously wide opening of the doors of the tent. When Sarah died, that broadening of the doors of the tent ceased. When Rivka came along, that was once again the case, that the doors would open very wide. The next thing is, as long as Sarah was alive, there was a special blessing. When Sarah died, that blessing ceased. When Rivka came along, it was reinstated. Point number four, as long as Sarah was alive, the Shabbos lasted from Friday night to night. When Sarah died, that phenomenon ceased. When Rivka came along, it returned. And when Yitzchak saw that Rivka is doing exactly like his mother, so miyad by the Yitzchak brought her into the tent, and he married. Okay. So true, that's a medrash, but the medrash brings 4 miracles. Rashi only brings 3, and in the different order. So if Rashi is only quoting it because the medrash says so, which is in itself a difficult thing to swallow, because Rashi doesn't quote every medrash. Why is he only quoting 3 out of 4 points of the medrash? Why in the wrong order? Another thing is, even when Rashi quotes a medrash, because he feels that there's something inadequate about the simple pshat, and there might be a need for something extra to really make it make sense. So he says, Darshu Rabbi Seinu, our rabbis taught. But he doesn't just say this is the pshat. Here, he quotes the words, and he doesn't say Darshu Rabbi Seinu, our rabbis taught. He just says, what does Ha'el Sarah mean? He brought her into the tent. Behold, she was his mother's son. In other words, when As's Dugna Sarah Ima, she became similar to his mother Sarah, and he goes through the 3 points, the candle and the dough and the cloud, that made him realize that she was an exact replica of his mother Sarah. So if Rashi was quoting it as a medrash to give us an extra flavor to the pasuk, he would have introduced it as a medrash. He doesn't introduce it as a medrash. He just says, and he tells us what it means. So Rashi obviously holds that this is the obvious, simple pshat. And why does he conclude by giving us the reference to Bereshit Rabbah? He's not quoting it from Bereshit Rabbah. He's giving it to us as the pshat. Rashi doesn't always bring sources for his pshat. If he's bringing Bereshit Rabbah, it must be a reason why he's bringing Bereshit. So the Rebbe explains that what's bothering Rashi in this pasuk is the 3 words, Ha'oihela Sarah Ima, the tent of his mother Sarah. All these 3 words are superfluous. All the pasuk needed to tell us was that Yitzchak brought her in, he married her, he loved her, end of story. Why is it important to know that he brought her Ha'oihela Sarah Ima into the tent of his mother Sarah? How does that make a difference? So therefore, Rashi suggests that what must have happened over here is, there's another puzzling part to the story. It says, the previous pasuk says, that Eliezer told Yitzchak everything that happened. He went through in great detail. He told him the whole story. He told him the miracles. Rashi explains. He revealed to him the miracles that happened. He explained to him the kvitzas haderech that he had. He explained to him how he was able to make the journey in miraculous speed. And the whole story, how Rivka appeared, he prayed that the girl will come out and she'll offer me, I'll ask her to give me something to drink. And she'll tell me that I'll give you camels as well, and I'll know that she is the appropriate wife for Yitzchak. as I'm finishing, even before I finish praying, Rivka comes out and I say to her, please give me something to drink. And she says, please drink. I'm going to give all your camels to drink. And she runs and she brings the water and she gives the camels. And I knew right away that this was, and then I asked her who she is. And she said she was the daughter of Besuel. And I realized that this is a match made in heaven. So you would think that after hearing these wondrous stories from Eliezer, Yitzchak would be convinced that she's the correct wife for him. But the pasuk says that only after this, Yitzchak brought her into the tent, and then he married her. So obviously something happened there in the tent, which convinced Yitzchak that Rivka was the correct match for him, even more than all Eliezer's stories. Eliezer's stories weren't sufficient. They didn't clinch it. They didn't finish the job. It's only once they brought her into the tent, there's something he saw in the tent that convinced him, and he went ahead and married her. So it must be that the miracles that happened in the tent were even greater than the miracles that Eliezer told him, or more convincing than the miracles that Eliezer told him. Since there's three superfluous words in the pasuk, so Rashi assumes that there's three miracles. Or else why would the Torah put in three superfluous words? Surely the Torah is trying to tell us about three miracles. What are the three miracles? So each miracle is described by a word. The first word is ha'ayala, the tent. What does the tent mean? The well-known tent. What makes a tent well-known? So we learned last week the story of the Akedah. Hashem said to Avraham Avinu, "V'lech lecha el eretz hamerid." Go to the land of Merid. V'haleyu sham la'olam, and bring up Yitzchak first for a burnt offering. Al achad heharim asherei merilacham, one of the mountains that I will tell you. I'll point out the mountain. Then, when they actually get there, it says, "Vayar es hamakei merachim." They saw the place from a distance. Doesn't say Hashem told them anything. They saw the place from a distance. So Rashi says, what does it mean they saw the place? What's the place mean? Rashi says they saw Anon Kashur al. They saw a cloud over one mountain. Since they saw a cloud over one mountain, they knew that cloud was showing the presence of the Shekhinah over that mountain. So they knew that was the mountain, and Hashem was instructing them to perform the Akedah. So we see that the way that you can identify the presence of the Shekhinah is with a cloud. So if we say, the tent, the well-known tent of his mother Sarah, what makes the tent the well-known tent? Because Sarah's tent always had a cloud representing the Shekhinah over it. And since Sarah's tent always had a cloud representing the Shekhinah over it, so it makes sense to say that the miracle that's being suggested by the word ha'ayala is that as long as Sarah was alive, there was a cloud on top of her tent. When Sarah passed away, the cloud disappeared. And when Rivka came, the cloud reappeared. So Yitzchak saw that there's something special about this girl. She's very similar to my mother Sarah. The same miracle that happened to my mother Sarah, that there's always a cloud over her head, is happening with her. The next word in the pasuk is Sarah. What's special about the word Sarah? Or what's special about Sarah? So we remember again in last week's said, when Avram is the third day after a circumcision, Kadosh Baruch Hu brought out the sun, very, very, very hot, that the guests shouldn't bother him. And then Avram was upset because he wanted to perform the mitzvah of Orchim, and Hashem sends him three angels appearing as people. Right? So remember that Avram Avinu went out of his way, he ran and he performed the mitzvah of Orchim to the best of his ability. Whatever he could, he did. Then it says that he called to Sarah, and he asked Sarah to bake bread for the guests. Question is, why didn't Avram bake the bread himself? Why did he ask Sarah to? So it's obvious that there was something special about Sarah's bread that nobody could replicate. And since Avram wanted for the guests the best, so he asked Sarah to bake the bread so that it should have this incredible blessing in it that only Sarah's bread had. So we know from the word, so the word Sarah reminds us of the unique miracle that was attributed to Sarah, that her bread had a special blessing. So when the pasuk says about another miracle that happened with Rivka, and this miracle is described as Sarah, so it must be just like Sarah was unique in the fact that her bread had a special blessing in it. So therefore, and that blessing disappeared when Sarah passed away. It didn't continue in any bread that Abraham or Yitzchak baked. And suddenly Rivka comes along and she bakes bread, and the bread has the special miracle that Sarah's bread had. There was a special blessing in the dough. You know that Rivka is a replica of Sarah. Then the third word in the pasuk, third superfluous word in the pasuk, is Ima, his mother. So we say to the 5-year-old child learning Chumash, when you think of your mother, what does that remind? What image comes to mind? It says the image that comes to mind when I think of my mother is my mother benching Shabbos. That's her special mitzvah. So we know that there was a miracle with the Shabbos. What was the miracle with the Shabbos? Just like Sarah's Shabbos lasted from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. So Rivka's Shabbos also lasted from Erev Shabbos to Erev. So that's why Rashi says these three miracles. One miracle with a cloud on top of the tent. One miracle with the blessing in the bread, in the dough. And one miracle with the Shabbos candles. Because that is alluded to in the three words. Ha'oihela, three superfluous words. Ha'oihela, Sarah, Ima. There's nothing in the pasuk that alludes to the fourth miracle that the Medrash talks about, but the doors opening wide. It doesn't say in the pasuk anything about doors opening wide. But Rashi was not quoting Midrashim. He's telling you pshat in the pasuk. In the pasuk was only three superfluous words. So Rashi says from this pasuk we only know three miracles. Where the Medrash got the fourth miracle from, that's a Medrash's business. I'm not in the Medrash business now. I'm in the pshat business. In pshat, there's three miracles. But then the obvious question is, so why does Rashi put them in a different order? Especially since the three words, ha'oihela, Sarah, Imay, we just pointed out that ha'oihela means the miracle of the cloud on top of the tent. Sarah means the miracle of the bread. And Imay means the miracle of the candles. But Rashi doesn't put them in that order. Rashi puts them in a different order. He says, first of all, the first thing he says is the candle burning from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. The second thing he says is a blessing in the bread. And the third thing he says is the cloud on top of the tent, which is the opposite of the pasuk ha'oihela Sarah Imay, the way we just explained it. So the answer to that is that Yitzchak was observing Rivka to see if she is worthy of being his wife or marrying into the family of Abraham. So what was he looking for? The first thing he looked for was how she performs mitzvahs. So he observed how she lit Shabbos candles. And he saw that her Shabbos candles miraculously lasted like Sarah's did for a very unusual amount of time. The second thing he was looking for is how she performs ordinary activities. Right? You should do all your actions for the sake of heaven and know Hashem in all your ways. So he observed how she performs ordinary activities like baking bread. And he saw that she bakes bread similar to the way Sarah bakes bread, has the same special blessing. And then he looked at the general effect that she had on her atmosphere. The general effect that she had on her atmosphere had nothing to do with her actions, nothing to do with a mitzvah, nothing to do with ordinary actions, just the general effect on the atmosphere. And then he saw that there was a cloud representing the Shekhinah over the tent. So in the order in which he was looking for, observing her and looking for signs that she was the appropriate match, fitting marry into the family of Avraham Avinu, this is the order in which he observed them, and therefore Rashi puts them in the order in which Yitzchak noticed them. Then the question is, why does it say Bereshus Daber? It has nothing to do with the Medrash. It's simple pshat of the pasuk. Why does Rashi at the end point out that he found this in Bereshus Daber? The answer is very simple. There's one detail that doesn't have a source in the pasuk. We know from the pasuk, from the word imay, that there was a miracle with the Shabbos candles. And we assume that that miracle was that it lasted longer than it was naturally meant to last. So if naturally Shabbos candles would last a few hours, probably these Shabbos candles lasted much longer. How much longer? Did they last till Tuesday night? Did they last for a month? How long did they last for? Nothing in the pasuk suggesting how long they lasted for. But Rashi says they lasted from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. How does Rashi know that? Where did he get that from? Rashi says, I found a similar story in Bereshit. And over there it says clearly how long. It says from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. So that's where I got it from. So this minute detail of how long the candles lasted for, that he got from Bereshit. The rest he gets from the Pasuk. Now there's a couple of very phenomenal things. When you read the Rashi in this way, you notice some very, very interesting things. One interesting thing you'll notice is, according to the way Rashi interprets the pasuk, that first these miracles happened, and then Yitzchak was convinced that she is a suitable wife for him, and he married her. That means that Rivka was lighting Shabbos candles before she was married, and she was, according to Rashi, she was 3 years old. So for those that have the custom that the Rebbe encourages very much, that a girl before she's married, from the age of 3 onward, from the time she can understand the concept of lighting Shabbos candles, should start lighting Shabbos candles. You have a backup for this right in the pasuk. Rivka lit Shabbos candles when she was 3 years old, before she was married. Another phenomenal thing here. When Sarah passed away, who lit Shabbos candles in Avraham Avinu's house? There was 3 years between Sarah's passing and Rivka's appearance. Rivka showing up on the scene. Who lit, for those 3 years, who lit Shabbos candles in his house? So it's assumed, like the halacha is, that if in a house where, for whatever reason, there is no woman of the house, so then the husband lights Shabbos candles. So Avraham Avinu must have lit Shabbos candles for those 3 years. Since Yitzchak noticed the similarity of Rivka to Sarah, and when Sarah was alive, the candles lasted from Shabbos to Shabbos. And then they stopped lasting from Shabbos to Shabbos. And then when Rivka came along as a 3-year-old girl, and she lit Shabbos candles, and they lasted again from Shabbos to Shabbos. That shows you that there was that Rivka's Shabbos candles were able to achieve something that Avraham Avinu couldn't achieve. Avraham Avinu was an incredible tzaddik. And nevertheless, when he lit Shabbos candles, they didn't last miraculously for any longer than they should have lasted. And when Rivka, this young girl, 3 years old, comes along and lights Shabbos candles, they last from Shabbos to Shabbos. What does that tell us? It tells us the incredible power that there is in a Jewish woman lighting Shabbos candles, even a young girl, 3 years old, which surpasses the Shabbos candles of Avraham Avinu. Why would that be the case? So generally, it says that the difference between the role of the man and the role of the woman can be summed up in the fact that the man's role is primarily to bring in from the outside world everything that's needed for a Jewish. So the man is generally responsible for Nasa and to bring in from the outside that which is necessary for the Jewish home. The woman's role is to take what is brought into the home and to develop it in such a way that it should make the home into a sanctuary for us. So since illuminating the home falls in, generally speaking, to the role of the woman, so therefore the power of illumination that a Jewish woman achieves through lighting Shabbos candles is a very unique thing, which Avraham Avinu even doesn't have. But a Jewish woman has been given that special kayach to be able to achieve that. Now, within the matriarchs themselves, we know that Sarah's candles lasted from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. We know that Rivka's candles lasted from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. That's what tells us this. The Medrash tells us this. We don't know what happened with Rachel and Leah, but we can assume that probably if Sarah Imenu's candles lasted from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos, and Rivka Imenu's candles lasted from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos, there's a good chance that the same thing happened with Rachel and Leah, although we don't have it explicitly stated anywhere. But since every Jewish woman is a Bas Sarah Rivka Rachel and Leah, so therefore it has to be assumed that every Jewish woman inherits from Sarah Rivka Rachel and Leah the power that her Shabbos candles should also burn up. The only thing is, sometimes it happens in a physical way. It can happen by Sarah and by Rivka. And sometimes it happens that the spiritual illumination that the Shabbos candles bring about lasts from Erev Shabbos. So even if you don't actually see the flame burning, but the effect of the flame of the Shabbos candles. burns from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos and illuminates the home and its environment throughout the entire week with the power of a Jewish woman lighting Shabbos candles. And so let's get this clear. So the question was, let me just repeat the question for the people watching on Zoom. The question over here is that the lighting of the Shabbos candles that she performed before she was married, so that we understand, but the other two miracles must have happened after she was married. So I'm not sure where you get that from, because the way that Rashi is understanding the pasuk is that all three miracles were necessary to convince Yitzchak that she was the appropriate match. So they must have all three happened before she was. So what are the three things? The three things are that there was a cloud on top of her tent, and there was a blessing in her bread that she baked. And the third thing was that her Shabbos candles lasted from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. So according to Rashi, all these three things happened before she was married. She was brought into it, and on her tent there was a cloud. Yeah, while she was there, she baked bread, and the bread that she baked had the special blessing in it that Sarah's bread. And while she was there, she lit Shabbos candles, and the Shabbos candles that she lit lasted from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. And only after Yitzchak saw these three miracles was he fully convinced that she is the correct and appropriate match for him, and he went and married her. Does that answer your question? No. It says by Yitzchak brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah. By Yikachas Rivka, then he took Rivka, she became his wife, and he loved her. So it's clear from the pasuk that the order is first he brought her into the tent, and then he married. So Rashi is explaining that this bringing her into the tent and seeing the three miracles that are alluded to by the three words had a greater effect on Yitzchak than all the miracles that Eliezer told him. So obviously there's something really incredible that took place in the three words, which clinched the deal more than everything that happened until then. Okay, it's clear now? Yes. Okay, so there's no question about it that even as a 3-year-old, she was much more mature than your average 3-year-old is. And that's why, for example, it says that they asked Rivka, will you go with this man? And our Chachamim say that from this passage we derive that it ain't a sina isha will be daita, that you marry off a woman only her consent. Now, if she was 3-year-old, the average 3-year-old, her consent or consent or lack of consent isn't very significant because she doesn't really understand what's going on. And the fact that Rivka was consulted and her consent is quoted in halacha as something that's significant, obviously as a 3-year-old she was very mature, but she was only 3 years old. So we see that at the age of 3, she lit Shabbos candles. It's true she was an unusually mature 3-year-old, but she was only 3 years old. And Rashi makes it very clear that she lit Shabbos candles, and her Shabbos candles lasted just like Sarah's did from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. Besuel, Lavan was her brother. Okay. So the question was, how did she know? How did she know that to light Shabbos candles? How did she know? Okay, so the question is not only on Rivka, the question is on all the Avos and all the Imois who kept how did they know? Right? So there are various answers given to this question. One of the answers given to this question is they knew Beruach HaTeva. Another answer given to this question is that their neshama, they were conscious of their neshama, and therefore, just like a regular human being is conscious of the needs of his body, nobody needs to teach us that when we're hungry we need to eat. Right? It's a natural, spontaneous thing. It comes naturally to us. And when we're tired, we need to sleep. But when it comes to the needs of our neshama, we need to be taught. Why? Because our neshama we're not really in touch with as much as we're in touch with our bodies. But the tzaddikim and tzidkaniyas who are in touch with their neshama as much as they're in touch with their bodies, not more. So the needs of the neshama also came spontaneous. So when it came to mitzvahs, one of the explanations how Abraham Avinu kept the whole Torah before it was given Who taught it to him? So one of the explanations is it just came naturally to him because he's in touch with his neshama. So the needs of his neshama came. But over here, I'm not sure we need to come on because the idea of lighting candles, it's getting dark. When it's getting dark, you need light. You need to light candles, right? Here it was getting dark before Shabbos. So the candles were unique in the sense that they were the Shabbos candles. And they lasted until the next night of Shabbos. She baked bread. People have to eat. So she baked bread. There was a blessing in her bread that made it very unique. So he knew that she was similar to Sarah. And the issue with the cloud, there's no question of how did she know. It wasn't her that put the cloud on. Hashem put the cloud there, representing the fact that the Shekhinah was present in her. Okay, I hope that's satisfactory. According to there are various interpretations, but according to Rashi and Chumash, she was 3 years old. She was born right at the time of the Akedah, and that's why right after the Akedah, you have the concluding portion, the last week portion, telling you about that Abraham Avinu was brought the news about Milcah giving birth to children to Nachor, and it says that Besuel Yala the Rivka, Besuel bore Rivka, and Rashi says that the whole portion is only mentioned over here in connection with the fact that Abraham needed to get the information that Rivka was born, so that he knew that in 3 years' time he can get to work on arranging the shidduch. So from Rashi it comes out very clear that she was 3 years. There are other interpretations, but Pshutei Shel Mikra, the simple chat in the pasuk, is where Rashi teaches the pasuk. He was 3 years old, and from Rashi we know that, as we just explained to Rashi, that she lit the candles before he married. That was one of the things that was a sign for Yitzchak that she's a appropriate shidduch. So if that's the case, she lit the candles at 3 years old before she was married. Yeah, it says that it was necessary to get her out of the impurity of the Besuel and Laban's home as soon as she was 3 years old. As soon as 3 years old, she was somewhat receptive to the impurities over there, and therefore she needed to be rushed out right away. That's why it was such an emergency, and they said, wait like 10 months, wait a year, and everybody else just said, no, we can't wait, got to be right now. Okay, we're going to move on to Tanya. So if you remember, we're still in the middle of the Sharblat, the title page, which is the page before page 2. We're going too far. It's the page that looks like this. Turn one more. One more. That's the one. Okay. So we discussed at the end of the last year the concept of derech arucha ufsara, the long and the short way. All right? And we explained it. I believe we did explain it on basic level, that there's a long way, which, yes, did we do this? Yeah? There's a long way, which basically understanding the greatness of Hashem, understanding the greatness of Torah mitzvahs, understanding the greatness of the neshama, contemplating on it, and that brings the person to love and fear Hashem. That causes the person to become internally transformed, and his priorities and his values should become that which is the love of Hashem and the fear of Hashem. Then we learned that there's also a short way, which is to become aware of the fact that we all have a subconscious hidden love of Hashem that we're born with, that's in our DNA, because we're descendants of Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. We have it within us to love Hashem more than anything else in the world. Sometimes we're aware of that love, and sometimes we're unaware of that love, but it's still the essence of who we are. That's why, throughout the ages, Yidden were Meiser Nefesh. Does all this sound familiar? We talked about this last week. Yeah, Yidden were Meiser Nefesh, and Kiddush Hashem even people with very little background, because when it comes to the crunch, a Yid feels that there's no way that he can sever himself from godliness. It's just not a possibility for him. The dearest thing in the world is his relationship with Hashem. It's more dear to him than his very life, and he'd rather die than sever himself from Hashem. And it's not that he gets that feeling at the time when he is challenged. The feeling is within him all the time, but it's in his subconsciousness. And at the time that he is challenged, it's uploaded from the subconsciousness to the consciousness. However, I think I pointed out at the end of the last year that that's only the most superficial way of understanding the word derech harucha v'tzara. There is a deeper way of understanding the words derech harucha v'tzara, and that is that it's one path, which is called derech harucha u'ktzara. It's a path that's both long and short, and that is to be understood. First, prefacing a story that we find in the Gemara that Rabbi Shiur ben Hananya, I believe it was traveling to Yerushalayim, and he came to a crossroad, and at the crossroad there were some children, and he asked them, which is the best way to Yerushalayim? And they said to him, do you want the long and short way, or do you want the short and long way? So he didn't understand the riddle, didn't understand what they were talking about. So he took a guess, and he said, tell me the short and long way. So they told him to follow this road, which he did, and it was a rather short distance. And when he got closer to Yerushalayim, there were gardens and orchards blocking the way, and he couldn't get into the city. So he made a U-turn, and he returned to the crossroad. Comes to the crossroad, he says to the children, didn't you tell me this is the short way? He said, we did, but we also told you that it's long. See, now you get it, yeah? It's a short road, but it's long because it doesn't really get you there. You ended up having to come back there. So he said, okay, so now tell me the long and short one. So they told him to follow the other road. So he followed the other road, and it was a long, windy road. But when he finally got there, he was able to go directly into the city. So that's the difference between the short and the long and short. So the Alter Rebbe says that the path that he's going to be teaching us in Tanya to Bilvavcha, remember we had the whole issue of, we understand how it's karev elecha, how it's accessible to us to be in control of our actions, of our speech, and of our conscious thought. And when it comes to our emotions, our enthusiasm, our excitement, how do we control that? How can you say karev elecha davar ma'id bilvavcha? Your emotions. Your emotions are not within your control. I gave the illustration, if you remember, about a group of people. We interviewed them. Asked how many people in this room love chocolate cake. So in a group of 10 people, chances are you'll have about 8 of them that love chocolate cake. What if you say at the count of 3, everybody should start loving chocolate cake? It's a ridiculous instruction because those that love it, love it. Those that don't love it, don't love it. So how can you say karev elecha davar ma'id bilvavcha, that it's accessible to every Jew to serve Hashem with your heart? Serving Hashem with your heart means to love Hashem and to fear Hashem. If you love something, you love something. If you're in love, you're in love. If you're not in love, you're not in love. There's no button to press to start loving. So what does it mean? You should love the Lord your God. How can you say karev elecha davar ma'id bilvavcha, that it's close to you and accessible to you in your heart? So the approach that the Alter Rebbe teaches in Tanya, which is basically the approach of Chabad, that you have to spend a lot of time and a lot of energy learning about the greatness of Hashem. And as a result of what you know and understand and contemplate on the greatness of Hashem, that will little by little inspire you to have a different value system, to be excited about different things and to become less excited about the things that are unimportant and more excited about the things that are important, more excited about neshama interests and less excited about body interests. So this is called, relatively speaking, the derech arucha uktzara, the long and short path, as opposed to, there's another approach. There's another approach where the main focus is on doing it. Only on doing it. In other words, in the time of the Alter Rebbe, one of the popular approaches to Avodas Hashem was prushim. There were prushim who used to walk around with blindfolds and make sure that they had no interaction with the physical world, and they were involved only with spiritual matters. So this sounds like a very, very admirable state of existence. However, it has a big problem. And that is, if you remove the blindfold, what's underneath the blindfold is the same Chaye that was there before. You haven't really changed the person internally. There isn't really a real difference in the person's internal existence. The Pasuk says, "Bi'arta harami kirbecha." You have to exterminate evil from within yourself, not only from your actions, not only from your external. Remember, we had a whole discussion about doing the right thing and being the right thing. And in Tanya, there's there's an emphasis on working also on being the right thing, not just doing the right thing, also being the right thing. So if the whole focus is on preventing inappropriate behavior, inappropriate speech, or inappropriate thought, and that's where it ends, so you're not getting any closer to actually being the right thing. Take the example of the person walking around with a blindfold for 20 years. When he takes off the blindfold after the 20 years, he has the same issues that he had before the 20 years. Nothing happened internally to transform his value system, to transform his priorities, to transform what he's enthusiastic about. That's called a short but long path. It's a quick fix, but it doesn't really get you there. Because if the mission is to transform, that the person should be internally transformed, that the evil should be eradicated from within him and replaced with holiness and replaced with passion for godliness, he hasn't achieved it. While the approach that the Alter Rebbe is teaching, which is to focus on rewiring your brain, rewiring your whole approach to reality, understanding Tamu Ru'u Ki Teiv Hashem, understanding that tasting you will see that Hashem is good. There's a mashal that's brought to the Baal Shem Tov, that if a person is sitting at home and they hear, one evening is sitting at home and they hear some noises, sounds like somebody's tinkering, and they look around and they see that there's a thief trying to break into their house. So there's two ways that you can deal with this crisis. One way is start screaming, "Get out of here! Get away from my house!" Yeah, and the Ganav gets frightened and he runs away. Fantastic. However, you've protected yourself temporarily, protected yourself for this moment, but you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow night. Tomorrow night he might come back again. You might not notice him. He'll get in. There's another approach. The other approach is you invite him in for a tea, and you sit down with him, and you schmooze with him a little, and you explain to him how being a ganav, being a thief, is not a way to live. Explain to him the advantage that there is in leading an honest life, being an upright member of society. Get yourself a decent job. Feel good about yourself. Feel fulfilled. Know that what you have is actually yours. And in this way, if you are successful in turning the person around, not only have you protected yourself, you also protected everybody else. And not only have you protected yourself for today, you protected yourself for always. So in the Nimshal, the Ganav is the Yetzer Hara. When the Yetzer Hara comes along, there's two approaches how to deal with it. One way you tell him, shake it, Sarais. It's forbidden. Forbidden. You're right, it is forbidden. But that worked for now. But if the Yetzer Hara is still, it has not internally, the Nefesh HaBahamis, the animal soul, has not been internally dented in any way, so you haven't changed anything for the next opportunity, for the next time, for tomorrow's attempted break-in. But if you sit down with the Nefesh HaBahamis, you say to him like this, what do you want? You want to have a good life, right? You want to have a good life. I will show you what true goodness is. Tamu Ru'u Ki Teiv Hashem. Taste and you will see that godliness is good. Taste and you will see that the greatest thing in the world is to have a connection with Hashem, to learn Hashem's Torah, to fulfill Hashem's mitzvahs, to allow your neshama to shine. That is the greatest thing in the world. And if you can convince him, or at least make a dent in his set of priorities, then you're not just fixing the matter temporarily. It's not just an external solution. You're getting to the core of the problem, and you're transforming the matter internally. So relatively speaking, you could say that screaming, "Thief, get away from here," is the short but long solution, because it deals with the matter very, very quickly. But it's not a real lasting solution. While the example of having a conversation and a pabrengen with a ganav that will make him rethink his priorities is a longer path, but it's short in the long run because it gets you there. It makes a real dent. Perhaps you could say this could be understood with a more contemporary motion. If a person has a headache, bad headache, yeah. So generally speaking, there's two ways to deal with it. One way to deal with it is the conventional method. Take 2 paracetamol. What do the 2 paracetamol do? It masks the effect of the headache. So you don't feel the pain. But what's causing the headache has not been addressed. There's something causing the headache. You don't just get a headache out of nowhere. There's something causing that headache. The paracetamol will mask the pain coming from the headache for 4 hours. What's going to happen after 4 hours? Either for reasons that you had nothing to do with, the cause has disappeared, and therefore the headache won't come back. Or after 4 hours, the cause has not disappeared, and therefore when the paracetamol wears off, it's back again, full swing. But you haven't done anything to change the reality that is causing the problem. There's another approach. Another approach is you have let's say a naturopath, and you sit down with a naturopath, and the naturopath looks at you, examines you, and says, the problem is that you have a deficit of a certain mineral or a certain vitamin, or you don't do enough exercise, you don't get enough fresh air, or your diet is not a healthy diet, and suggests that you fix A, B, or C. Either take the minerals that you're missing, or take the vitamins that you're missing, or get the exercise that you're missing, or get the fresh air that you're missing, or change your diet to make it a more healthy diet, whatever it is. That's the purpose of the exercise, is not to mask the symptoms of the headache. The purpose of the exercise is to transform you, that you shouldn't have to put up with this kind of headache, because you won't be causing yourself a headache anymore, because you'll become a different person. Mrs. Morris, from your medical perspective, making any sense over here? Yeah. So this is the difference between the approach of the short and long. Fix the symptoms. Are you really fixing the problem? Probably not. But for the moment, you're going to get rid of the symptoms. And the long and short is, the problem is not the symptoms. The problem is that you have a wrong priority system. The problem is that you have a very limited scope. You think that a good life is to enjoy everything in the physical world, and you need to have a hammer setting you over the head. Forbidden, 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 forbidden. And it's a never-ending process. What you need to do is you need to rewire your whole way of thinking, your whole way of living. You should have a different perspective, a different focus. And when you have a different perspective and a different focus, you'll come to realize that the goodness that you're after is not going to be found in physical pleasures. The goodness that you're after, and the delight that you're after, and the enjoyment of life that you're after is going to be found in godliness. Connect with Hashem, and through there, that is the ultimate source of godliness. Everything good in the world comes from Hashem, and therefore Hashem is the ultimate source of goodness. And the more you connect with Hashem, the more goodness you bring into your life, the more delight you bring into your life, and true delight. And when you get that, it's because you really rewired your whole perspective, your whole way of understanding things, your whole way of figuring things out, that you've taken the long but yet short path to a transformed self. And that's what the Alter Rebbe is saying, that in this Sefer, I'm not going to give you the quick fix, but that I wrote a Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch will tell you what's permissible and what's forbidden. It'll tell you how to do the right thing. The point of this Sefer is primarily not about how to do the right thing, it's primarily how to become the right thing. And to become the right thing, you're going to need to rewire your whole approach to things, the way you understand things, to understand what's good and what's bad, what is delightful and what is not delightful, what is positive and what is negative. And when you rewire your whole way of thinking, your whole way of understanding things, you will have achieved a true achievement. You'll have transformed yourself, truly transformed yourself, so that you're a different person. You've become something else. You're not just doing something else. You're being something. Okay, so let me just repeat the question for the people. The question was there were tzaddikim like Shiur Bar Yochai who lived in a cave for 13 years. He didn't have any interaction with the world. So it seems from what I said before that the Alter Rebbe was not in favor of the approach of Parshas where you have no interaction with the world, but rather you should change your mindset so you should have a different perspective of the world. So the question was, how does that fit with the fact that Shiur Bar Yochai was hidden in the cave for 13 years? So I'm not sure I understand the question, because Shiur Bar Yochai historically did not hide in a cave for 13 years to be separated from the physical world. He hid in the cave for 13 years to protect himself from the Romans, who had decreed that anyone who studies Torah would be killed, and they were after him. And therefore he hid in the cave for 13 years, and Hashem made miracles to sustain him, despite the fact that he was in a situation where, according to the rules of nature, he could not have survived. So, but the point over here is not so much what not to do. The main point over here is what to do. How does one come closer to Hashem, not only in a superficial sense of doing the right things, which is very important. Let's not minimize the importance of doing the right thing. It's very important to do the right thing. It's very important to say the right thing, and it's very important to think the right thing. And it's absolutely forbidden to do the wrong thing, absolutely forbidden to speak the wrong thing, and absolutely forbidden to think the wrong thing. However, when we're talking about a true achievement in Avodas Hashem, to make true inroads, to make true progress in Avodas Hashem, it's not only measured by doing, it's also measured by what you are. And what you are is measured by what your desires are, what your excitement is, what attracts you, what switches you on. So when a person his desires are physical and corporeal and materialistic, and his excitement is physical, corporeal, and materialistic, and anything that goes beyond the corporeal and materialistic, he has no interest in whatsoever. He'll do you a big favor, so and do the right thing, so to be Yosef or some Shulchan Aruch. That's not being the right thing. That's not getting closer to Hashem internally. And the Torah wants us not only to do the right thing, the Torah wants us to be the right thing. And this Sefer is a guidebook on how a person can achieve being the right thing, becoming more excited about godliness, understanding that which is not godly is ayin ve'efes mamas, totally nothing. There's nothing to be excited about, and how godliness is what it's all about. I think I want to share the story. It's an interesting illustration of perspective. There's a Yid in Kfar Chabad called Rabbi Baran. This Rabbi Baran was once on an El Al flight from New York to Tel Aviv. And after a while, he got up from his place. He went around from one passenger to another, offering them to put on film. And it was very well received, and people were putting on film one after the other. At one point, the stewardess approached him and said, "Excuse me, sir, the seatbelt sign is on. You'll have to sit down." So he said, "I'm sorry, there's a few more people that I haven't yet put on film with, so I still need." She said, "But we're landing shortly, and it's dangerous to stand here when the seatbelt sign is on, and during the landing process, you have to sit down." So he said, "But there's people that haven't put on film yet." So she said, "So when you get to the airport, when you land, you can ask the people then to put on film." So he said, "Listen, then everybody's in a rush to get home. While they're sitting on the plane, they're a captive audience. So that's the best time to ask people to put on film." Says to her, "Could you perhaps ask the pilot to make a circle a few times, so there could be an opportunity to get a few more people to put on film?" Yeah. So we all laugh. Why do we laugh? The pilot's going to circle a few times to hit the put on film with a few more people. But if you think about it, you ask yourself a simple question: what's the true purpose of this plane making the journey from New York to Tel Aviv? It makes such a big difference if the people will be in New York and they'll be in Tel Aviv. But wherever they'll be. Yeah. Real purpose of this journey is that Yidden should put on film. So you have a whole bunch of Yidden trapped in this airplane, and you have this Rabbi Baran going around putting on film with one person, another person. It's perfect. That's the purpose. If the purpose hasn't been fulfilled yet, so normal, sensible 1, 2, and 2 equals 4. Intelligence will tell you that the plane should circle a few more times till it fulfills its mission, till it fulfills its purpose, right? So it's a question of where you're coming from. What's your attitude? What's your perspective on reality? What's your perspective on what's good? What's valuable? What's yeah, it's a whole. So the Alter Rebbe is saying what we want to achieve with this sefer is not quick fixes. What we want to achieve with this sefer is a transformation of our whole value system, a transformation of our whole approach to life, to reality, to what's good, what's important, what's unimportant, a different perspective. When you have a different perspective, automatically everything fits into place. And this is also one of the reasons why people will sometimes come along and they say, I study Chassidus, and it doesn't do anything for me. It's like the person coming to the naturopath saying, I took your minerals, and the headache didn't go away. I take paracetamol, it goes away. Take your minerals, and you're a fraud, you're a fake. I took your minerals, nothing happened. He says, you don't understand where I'm coming from. The paracetamol doesn't change you. It masks your symptoms. That you can do a quick fix. I'm not interested in masking your symptoms. I'm interested in transforming. It's a process. It takes a long time. You have to absorb the minerals, or you have to allow the effect of the exercise or the diet or whatever it is to seep through and internally transform you. You should become a different person. So that's the approach of Chassidus. Don't expect that you learn Chassidus, you suddenly become a tzaddik. It's not going to work like that. It's little by little. It's making an impression, little by little, changing your value system from the core, and little by little filtering through so that you become a different person. You become a different person. You automatically have a different approach to things. You automatically going to respond differently to situations. That's the derech arucha uktzara. That's the short and the long and short path. It's a lengthy process. Tanya is 53 chapters. It's not an easy business, and it encourages you to study a lot about things that are written outside of Tanya. The rest of Chassidus talks about the greatness of Hashem, the greatness of Torah mitzvahs, the greatness of the neshama, and to study it diligently and to focus on it and to contemplate on it. It's not going to happen in 10 seconds. But what will be happening slowly but surely is you'll have a different perspective on what is worth respecting in life, what's worth getting excited about in life, what's worth being passionate about in life, and what's not worth getting excited about, what's not worth being passionate.